Have you ever imagined a lonely woman facing ruthless poachers to protect a giant, yet gentle creature? Can a friendship between a human and a wild animal change the fate of an entire species? Step into the true story of Dian Fossey, an American animal researcher and a gorilla named Digit, the friend she rescued from the clutches of poaching in Rwanda during the 1970s. The Virunga Mountains, located in the heart of Africa, are a mystical land where volcanic peaks pierce the sky, shrouded in mist and lush bamboo forests. Here on the borders of Rwanda, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo lies the last refuge of the mountain gorilla's majestic creatures, teetering on the brink of extinction. In 1967, Dian Fossey set foot in this rugged terrain, driven by a passion to study and protect them. With a fiery heart and steely resolve, she turned the wild forest into her living laboratory. But Virunga was not just a paradise, it was also a battleground. Poachers, driven by the thirst for profit from the illegal wildlife trade, scattered traps throughout the forest, ready to kill any creature that fell into their snares. On a fateful day in 1970, Dian discovered a young gorilla caught in one of those cruel traps. The gorilla, later named Digit, was severely injured, its leg nearly crushed. With patience and unconditional love, Dian rescued and cared for it, forging a deep bond between two souls from different worlds. From that moment, Digit became an inseparable shadow by Dian's side. But what awaited them ahead? How could such a fragile friendship withstand the lurking dangers? And what did Dian do to protect Digit and its kind? Let's explore this emotional story. Before continuing with this captivating story, please hit the subscribe button to support the animal. Kiss a channel. Your support helps us bring more wonderful animal stories to you. Dian Fossey and Digit, a journey of connection and heart. Have you ever thought that a single glance could change a destiny? Deep in the forests of Rwanda, Dian Fossey proved just that when she met Digit, a small gorilla with eyes full of fear. When Dian found Digit, its leg was trapped in a poacher's snare, blood streaming, its gaze pleading for help on the edge of life and death. With gentle hands and a steadfast heart, Dian freed Digit and brought it back to her research station, beginning a journey not only to heal its wounds, but also to kindle trust between two species. In the early days, Dian cared for Digit like a mother. She cleaned its wounds, applied medicine, and bandaged it carefully, even as Digit growled and struggled. But Dian never gave up. She sat for hours by Digit's side, gently stroking its fur, whispering words of comfort in the stillness of the forest. Gradually, Digit's aggression faded, replaced by curiosity. One day, when Dian reached out to touch its head, Digit didn't flinch, but looked up at her. Their eyes met, a moment frozen in time, where trust began to blossom. From then on, the bond between Dian and Digit grew unbreakable. She spent time teaching Digit how to adapt to its troop, how to use branches to find food, and Digit responded with an extraordinary attachment. Every morning, Digit waited for Dian at the forest's edge, its eyes lighting up as she approached. They communicated without words. A touch, a glance, or a soft grunt from Digit was enough to convey everything. To Dian, Digit was more than just a gorilla. It was living proof of the connection between humans and wildlife. She wrote in her diary, "Digit is the soul of the forest, the bridge between me and the world I vow to protect." This relationship transcended the boundaries of scientific research. Dian didn't just heal Digit, she allowed it to heal her. A heart once lonely in the depths of the forest now found resonance. They became a symbol, a story that astonished the world. How could a scientist and a wild animal understand each other so deeply? Tragedy and separation, but happiness doesn't last forever. Have you ever wondered what happens when courage confronts cruelty? One fateful afternoon, as Dian was taking notes near the gorilla troop, the sound of gunfire tore through the forest's tranquility. She rushed forward, her heart pounding, only to face a horrifying sight. Digit lay motionless on the ground, blood soaking its thick black fur, its once sparkling eyes now closed forever. It had sacrificed its life to protect its family from the poacher's blades. Dian knelt beside Digit, clutching its cold body, tears streaming down her face. "Digit, why did it have to be you?" she cried out in despair, but only the forest wind answered. The pain tore at her heart, not just for losing a friend, but for feeling she had failed to protect it. The days spent with Digit, the touches, the gazes now turned into painful memories. The tragedy didn't end with Digit's death. For her own safety, Dian was forced to leave Rwanda. The poachers hadn't just taken Digit. They threatened her life as well. On her last day, Dian stood silently gazing at the forest one more time, her heart heavy. She had no chance to bury Digit, no chance to say goodbye. As the plane took off, she looked out the window, tears rolling down, wondering if she could ever forgive herself for not saving the friend who had given everything. Dian left, but her story with Digit never truly ended. It lives on as a reminder of love, sacrifice, and the cost of protecting what is most precious. Dian Fossey's return to Virunga had passed since Dian Fossey left Rwanda, carrying the pain of losing Digit, the gorilla she considered her closest friend, and the indelible memories of the Virunga Mountains. But her heart never truly left this place. After much hesitation, Dian finally decided to return, holding onto a fragile hope to find the gorillas from Digit's troop, the creatures she had devoted her life to protecting and studying. Would any of them remember her, or had time and the harshness of nature erased all traces of their special bond? As the jeep stopped on the bumpy dirt road, Dian stepped out, her boots sinking into the soft, damp earth. The air in Virunga was thick with the scent of wet leaves and distant wood smoke. Above her, the volcanic peaks of the Virunga Range towered, piercing through the dense mist like immortal sentinels of the forest. Everything felt heartbreakingly familiar, yet strangely distant. She noticed new trails, likely made by rangers or later researchers, but the ancient trees still stood tall, their canopies woven tightly into a deep green dome that covered the sky. Dian took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill her lungs. Memories flooded back like a wave. The long days quietly following the guerrilla troop through the forest, the silent nights by the campfire listening to the sounds of wildlife, and the peaceful moments with Digit sitting beside him, watching him care for his family. Now, she returned with a burning desire to find those familiar faces, to see if a part of her past still survived in this wilderness. Crossing the forest's boundary, Dian felt the air shift. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the ground. She walked along the trail that once bore her and Digit's footprints, each step a journey back in time. Here was where she first met Digit, trapped in a poacher's cruel snare. There was the clearing where they used to sit together, watching the fiery sunset fade into darkness. Every tree, every blade of grass stirred a fragment of memory. But with it came a growing anxiety. What had become of Digit's troop? Had they survived the turbulent years? Or had poaching and habitat destruction taken them all? Pushing back her fear, Dian ventured deeper into the forest. Birds sang merrily, insects buzzed, but she could only hear her heart pounding in her chest. After what seemed like an endless trek, she reached a small clearing surrounded by dense trees, a familiar spot in her memory. This was where the guerrilla troop often gathered to eat and play, where she had spent hours observing them. If they were still in the area, this is where she would find them. Stopping at the edge of the clearing, Dian strained her eyes toward the tree line. Everything was eerily silent, no sound, no sign of life except the wind rustling the leaves. She stood there, a mix of excitement and dread swelling inside her. Were they still here, or had she come too late? Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Dian cupped her hands around her mouth and called out loudly, "Pucker, Coco, Titus." The name she had given to each member of Digit's troop rang out, their clear tones cutting through the stillness. She hoped these sounds, once a signal of safety and trust, would stir memories in their minds. If they were still somewhere nearby, Dian Fossey and Digit, a journey of connection and heartache. Her calls echoed through the forest, then faded into silence. Dian stood still, every sense alert, waiting for a response. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. 1 minute passed, then 2, but nothing happened. Doubt began to creep into her mind. Perhaps they had moved to another part of Virunga, or worse, perhaps they no longer existed. But then, a tiny sound rang out, the dry snap of a twig, the gentle rustle of leaves. Dian's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She turned toward the sound, her eyes straining to see through the dense foliage. From the darkness, a large shape gradually emerged, a gorilla, massive in size yet moving with astonishing grace. It was a silverback, its back fur shimmering under the faint light, filtering through the canopy. Dian held her breath, not daring to blink. Could this be one of the gorillas she once knew? It looked familiar, that powerful stance, those broad shoulders, but she couldn't be sure. Time can change so much. She took a small, cautious step forward, her voice trembling as she called softly, "Titus, is that you?" Titus, one of the gorillas she had been close to, a member of Digit's group that she remembered vividly. The gorilla stopped, its deep black eyes staring straight at her. In that moment, neither moved. The air between them was heavy, tense, like a taut string about to snap. Dian felt her heart almost stop, waiting for a sign, anything that it recognized her. Then, the gorilla emitted a low grunt, a sound that could mean many things: curiosity, warning, or even recognition. Dian stood still, her mind racing. She wanted to believe it remembered her, but experience told her not to jump to conclusions. Gorillas have long memories, but too many years had passed. Slowly, she extended her hand, palm up, a familiar gesture she had used with Digit to show trust and friendliness. She held the pose, her eyes fixed on the gorilla, hoping it would understand. The gorilla watched her, then took a step closer. Its nostrils flared as it sniffed the air, seemingly trying to recognize her scent. Hope flared up in Dian's heart like a small flame. Maybe, just maybe, it truly remembered her. But before she could take another step, a loud noise suddenly erupted from the other side of the clearing. Another gorilla charged out, younger and seemingly more aggressive. It pounded its chest repeatedly, emitting sharp hoots, as if warning or vying for attention. The silverback turned to the newcomer, and in an instant, the moment between Dian and it was shattered. The two gorillas moved away, their forms quickly swallowed by the forest. Dian stood there, her chest heaving, her mind in turmoil. Did the silverback recognize her? Or was it just curious about a human's presence in its territory? She couldn't be sure, but one thing was clear: there were still gorillas here, and she wasn't ready to give up. With renewed determination, Dian continued walking, following the direction where the two gorillas had disappeared. She didn't know that the most fateful momentan encounter that would change everything was still waiting for her ahead. A tearful reunion. Dian Fossey trudged through the Virunga forest, her boots sinking into the soft, damp earth that was once home to her old friends. The wind rustled through the leaves, mingling with distant bird calls. But the forest today seemed strangely silent. She had called their names: Pucker, Titus, Digit, with a faint hope that someone would respond. But only one gorilla had appeared earlier, and its unfamiliar gaze weighed heavily on Dian's heart. Perhaps time had erased their memories of her, or worse, they were no longer here. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the dense bushes. Dian stopped, holding her breath, her eyes wide as she tracked every movement. From the shadows, an adult gorilla emerged. It was large and majestic, with silver fur on its back glistening under the sunlight filtering through the leaves. Dian stood still, not daring to move, fearing that even the slightest sound might make it flee. The gorilla approached her, each step slow but deliberate. When it stopped a few feet away, Dian noticed something in its eyes, a mix of curiosity and familiarity. Just like how Digit used to look at her. Her heart raced, a thought flashing through her mind. Could this be Digit's offspring? Then, as if answering the question in her heart, the gorilla slowly extended its hand. Its large, rough hand gently touched Dian's. That gesture and action, gorillas reserved for those they deeply trust, left her choked with emotion. With trembling hands, Dian reciprocated, her fingers lightly touching its skin. A powerful wave of emotion surged within her, as if she had just rediscovered a lost part of her memory. The gorilla lifted its head, its deep black eyes gazing directly into Dian's. In that moment, time stood still. Dian saw in its eyes the warmth, intelligence, and recognition she had once seen in Digit. It wasn't just a look, it was a connection, an affirmation that her bond with Digit lived on, transcending death and the years of separation. Tears welled up and streamed down Dian's cheeks, She sobbed, her choked cries blending with the forest wind. She cried for the longing for Digit, and for the unexpected joy of finding his trace in the creature before her. "Digit," she whispered, her voice breaking, "you are his child, aren't you?" The gorilla didn't look away, as if it understood Dian's heart, as if it too felt that timeless connection. Dian knelt down, her trembling hand touching the gorilla's face. She remembered the days with Digit, how he sat beside her in silence, how he looked at her with absolute trust, and now, through this gorilla's eyes, she saw that light again. It wasn't just an animal, it was the embodiment of the friendship and love she had dedicated her life to protecting. "Thank you," Dian said, her voice choked with tears. "Thank you for showing me that he is still here." The gorilla gave a soft grunt, a warm sound like consolation. It sat down beside her, allowing her to stroke its thick fur, a peaceful moment she had once shared with Digit. For a brief instant, Dian felt as though past and present merged, as if Digit had never left her. Then, after a long while, the gorilla stood up. It looked at her one last time, its gaze lingering, before turning and walking into the depths of the forest. Dian remained kneeling, tears still falling, but in her heart there was now a sense of peace. She knew that her bond with Digit would never be lost. It lived on in this forest, in the creature she loved, and in her own heart. The story of Dian Fossey and Digit is not just a story about the friendship between humans and wild animals, but also a reminder of our responsibility to protect these wonderful creatures. Through Dian's emotional journey, we see the power of love, sacrifice, and resilience. Each of us can contribute to protecting wild animals, even through the smallest actions. If you feel moved and want to continue following meaningful stories like this, please click the subscribe button on the Animal Kissa channel. Don't forget to leave a comment sharing your thoughts on this story. We look forward to hearing your opinions. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video. Let's spread love to wild animals together. See you in the next videos.